Good evening. I'd like to call the City of Pittsburgh Commission meeting to order. Please join me in the flag salute. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. We'll open the meeting public input, and I see we have Pete here to
Lead in prayer. Yes, thank you. And so, let us pray. Lord our God, we turn to you and ask your blessing as we begin this meeting. Assist us with your light and lend your wisdom. Help us to listen, to understand, and seek a deeper truth. Help us to communicate transparently and respectfully, speaking the truth in love. Please bless and protect our city. We pray for beneficial weather, for the needs of the most vulnerable among us, and we give thanks for your many blessings. Amen.
Amen. Thank you. Anyone else for public input?
William Strength, 1515 Hampton, here in Pittsburgh. During the public input portion of the April 23rd, 2019 City Commission meeting, I referred to comments from City Manager Hall and urged the commissioners to give consideration to items before rubber stamping them. I added that the Commissioner Munsell was the only one who consistently asked questions and yet sometimes was ridiculed for them. At the May 14, 2019 City Commission meeting, Mayor O'Brien said he took exception to my comments. If the mayor feels that I was wrong, I offer my apology.
Thank you.
That being said, I would like to take exception to the fact that the mayor, as the chief official of this commission, has permitted the city manager to go on record with a fabricated timeline for the Silverback Landing project. As elected officials and employees of the city, it is the duty of each to speak with integrity and accuracy, state facts for the citizens of this city. The city of Pittsburgh is building and paying $1.25 million for a new road from the south side of Silverback Landing. The mayor, the commissioners, approved the 5-year capital expenditure budget in October 2017. Not only was it for Silverback Way, but also $1.725 million for the reconstruction of Hampton Road for the developer during Phase 2 of Silverback Landing. All of these decisions occurred prior to the public meeting with East Hill residents at Pittsburgh Library on May 29, 2018. Communications between the city manager and Public Works Director Cameron Aldrin occurred more than a year before the library meeting about discussions needed for the south opening and a sketch from the developer showing the south entrance. All of the commissioners have been made aware of this communication. The city manager's subsequent comments alleged the taxpayers of Pittsburgh could thank the East Hill residents for the Silverback Way. This is absolutely not factual and sows distrust with citizens when untruths are told by our elected officials and city employees who try to put blame on others when it is truly lies at their own feet. Thank you.
Anyone else for public input? Seeing, are you coming?
Cheryl Brooks, 1533 Hampton Road. There was some comments at the last meeting about the discrepancies in what actually repair and maintenance was. And I guess if you go on Kansas Department of Transportation's website, it states that the maintenance is activities of operations that are intended to maintain and preserve the condition of an existing facility, extending the useful life and slow down the future deterioration of a road. And then it lists in here road maintenance and what it includes. And I do have a copy of that if you'd like it. And my second comment is I was wanting to know what the status of Silverback Landing is right at the moment, because this month has brought so much rain. And I live on the very back side of it, near the creek area, and we've had over 20 inches of rain, and it's higher than it's ever been as long as we've lived there, and we've been there for 23 years, and twice in the last week, the road to Via Christi on Centennial has been closed because there's been water over the road, and it's not even a 100-year flood, and I'm just concerned that the stormwater runoff is always got to be a priority because they haven't even started building there yet. There's no disturbing of the land or building yet other than the road coming in, which is on the furthest south part of where it's going to come in. So please keep that in mind about stormwater runoff. It is important, and if you've been out there and seen what, I've never seen it like it is before, and I just want you guys to be aware of that. And I'm going to be one of the first ones right there, and it's came within 50 feet of our house right at the moment. And we was up pretty much most of the night. Oh, on Monday night after the tornado, I have to give Westar kudos. We were only without power for 38 hours, but if it wasn't for generators running our pumps, we definitely would have been flooded. And Westar did a stand-up job getting people back online. Thank you for your time.
Thank you. Any other public input? Seeing none, I close public input. We take on the consent agenda. Is there anything that we'd like deleted?
I'd like to remove item C, please.
E?
C.
C.
As in cat.
Okay. With the exception of C, we look for a motion to approve.
So moved.
Second?
Aye.
Seconded.
Seconded.
It's been moved and seconded. Roll call vote.
Chenoweth. Aye. McNally.
Aye.
McNay. Aye. Mensa.
Aye.
O'Brien.
Aye. Item C, approval of agreement number 66-19 between the Secretary of Transportation and the City of Pittsburgh for the construction of approximately 2,200 feet of 6-foot wide concrete trail along the north side of Memorial Drive from Walnut Street to the crosswalk near the western intersection of McNally Drive and Memorial Drive. And if approved, authorize the mayor to sign the agreement.
I just wanted to make sure that didn't get buried. I just wanted everyone to hear about it because, you know, Cameron, I love sidewalks. And I just wanted to say thanks to everybody who worked on that grant and making that happen. Thanks to the Active Transportation Advisory Board. I know that was their #1 priority that they set on their project, and I just wanted to highlight that was getting done, and so thanks. That's it.
Thank you. It's good to say.
Good job.
Any other questions or comments regarding C?
I move to approve.
I second.
It's been moved and seconded. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Special presentations. 2018 Comprehensive Annual Financial Report. Audrey Uderman of Mize, Hauser and Company, PA, the city's auditing firm, will present to review the city's 2018 audit and CARF. You don't
Mayor,
look
City
like
Commissioners,
Audrey.
we had our audit for 2018 and prepared a comprehensive annual financial report, or CAFR. And here tonight is Auditor Audrey Older to present the
Great.
overview of all that.
Great, thank you.
Good evening, everybody.
Good evening.
I'm going to start going through the financial statements, and you can just stop me along the way if you have questions. So I'm going to start on page 1, and that's our independent auditor's report. This report goes through, it talks about our responsibilities in regards to the financial statements, management's responsibilities, because these are the city's financial statements. Most importantly, it gives the opinion on the financial statements, which is the last paragraph on page 1. It gives an opinion on each component of the financial statement, and each one of those has received an unmodified opinion. So that's the cleanest, highest opinion the financial statements can receive. It speaks to the work that Jamie and his staff do throughout the year, not just when we're here for the audit. He is great about calling and asking questions throughout the year, and we really appreciate that. If we move on to page 2, there's an emphasis of matter paragraph at the top of this particular section. And I just kind of want to briefly highlight that because it has to do with an accounting principle change in regards to other post-employment benefits. So if you see that header and you might cause some panic because you're drawing attention to something, it's really just drawing attention to that restatement because of an accounting principle change. So we reference the note disclosure so you can read more about that particular item. If we move on to page 3, this is management's discussion and analysis. This is a really good part of the financial statement because it gives management an opportunity to analyze last year in comparison to this year and talk about events that occurred throughout the year. So I strongly encourage you to read that part because it's some very interesting information in it. If we move on to page 15, this is the only part of the financial statement where we take the city and all of the financials and put it on 2 pages, much like you would see in a business financial statement. So page 15 would be something like you would consider a balance sheet, shows all the capital assets, shows all the assets and all of the debt of the city. And then on 16, this is somewhat similar to an income statement, where you're going to see all of the revenue and expenditures of the city pulled onto 2 pages. So if you want to see the city as a whole, those are the 2 pages that I encourage you to look at. In the notes to the financial statements, there really weren't any changes with the exception of that new accounting principles change. So if you're looking through the note disclosures and they look really similar to the prior year, they should. I do want to point out where that note disclosure is. It's on page 55. So this is the new post-employment benefit, health insurance, and then if it goes on into the CAPERS portion of that additional post-employment benefit, you can see those changes due to that accounting principle in those note disclosures. So that's really the only change in these financial statements that's materially different from the year before. We're going to skip ahead quite a ways to page 77, and this is the stats section. And in this particular part of the financial statement, Jamie and his staff have an opportunity to lay out trend information over the last 10 years. I find it really interesting. You can see how your city has developed in the last 10 years, not only financially, but from a demographic standpoint as well. And so it has a really lot of historical data within that section of the financial statement. We're going to move on to page 100. This is a special part of the financial statement that has to do with the federal aid that you receive and spend. So any entity that spends more than $750,000 in federal money has to have this special audit. We call it a single audit. And we go through and we have to audit at least 20% of the grants. We audit well over 50% because you have one really big grant, and that's the one that we audit every year. We have to audit that particular grant because it's your only major fund, and to get coverage we have to make sure that we audit that grant. And that is the Section 8 Housing Choice Voucher Grant. That is a very technical grant. It's an operations grant that has a lot of very detailed regulations that go with it. And so every year we go through and we audit that and we look at all of the compliance requirements. And if you go onto page 102, this is basically a summary of the results of that audit. And so you can see on those pages there weren't any significant deficiencies or material weaknesses or compliance findings. Your housing department does a really great job of handling a mass amount of paper. And we go out there and work with them every year. They implement the suggestions that we have and call us throughout the year with questions as well. And the last 4 pages in the report are letters that we give to you that would communicate if there were material weaknesses or significant deficiencies or non-compliance would be in these letters. Those are deficiencies over internal controls or your federal grants. If you read through there, it's really very boilerplate language, so you won't note any findings within those 2 pages. Okay, do you have any questions for me?
I don't have any questions. I think it's really an interesting thing for us to go through and see how it all comes together. We appreciate all the work that our staff does and you checking up on us and making sure that we're all dotting the I's and crossing the T's.
Absolutely. All right, thank you for having me.
Thank you.
Anyone else? Thank you. Item B, Economic Development Quarterly Report. Director of Economic Development Blake Benson and Daryl Pullman Director of Kansas Polymer Research Center, will present the quarterly economic development report.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, members of the commission. Darrell and I are here to present our quarterly activities update. With that, we'll go ahead and dive right into it. We've submitted 3 proposals so far this year for new projects looking for a community to invest in. 2 years ago, we submitted 2 all year. Last year, we submitted 7 total. And in the first quarter of this year, we've already submitted 3. Out of those 3, we did receive a site visit. Mayor O'Brien, you were involved in that. 12 members of Darren's team helped pull that together. Went extremely well, and we've already been told that the prospect plans to come back for a second site visit. So that's something that we feel very optimistic about, and getting a chance to show off our community. But certainly appreciate Darren and everybody on his team that made that trip so successful. But we'll obviously keep you updated as that prospect develops.
The next item on the list is the EDA proposals. That's the Economic Development Association. We've been working with them for at least the 5-6 years that I've been in my current position or positions at the university. We've had some level of success with those, but what we're doing right now is we're doubling down on a lot of those efforts, and we've hired additional resources to help us produce more grants because we're leaving opportunities out there that we've not been able to pursue based off of our staffing opportunities. So we're investing in additional resources both at the university and externally, and we did just submit a brand new innovation strategies, a regional innovation strategies grant that's worth almost $1 million that we are a final contestant for right now, and we'll be expecting an answer in the next 30 days on that particular grant. So that's a significant opportunity for us, and there's others that we're now pursuing in addition to that one piece of granting opportunity.
We are currently working 3 expansion prospects. One of them actually has been green-lighted and will create 70 new jobs this summer. I'm not at liberty in a public meeting to mention the name of the business, but that is going to happen, so we're very excited about that. We're working with another local employer, met with them last week, and anticipate bringing an incentive request to you in the middle of June to help that local business expand their efforts here in Pittsburgh. And then another expansion prospect that's a little earlier in the planning stages, that may be this fall. But I know the city obviously maintains a commitment to growing the businesses that are already here, and things are looking very good on that front, and look forward to keeping you updated on those expansion prospects.
Great, thanks. We felt like it was time to come back and give you guys, give the commissioners an update on Block 22. We just completed our first full year of having students in that facility. We believe that it went very well. From everything from the actual move-in through the first year, we've had very minimal disruptions through service. They have already secured about 96% of the capacity for the next year, so we will have that facility 100% completely filled again this year. From the student side. Down on the commercial side, we moved the University Strategic Initiatives team into the building back in December. That went relatively smoothly. They are now in place and have been for about 6 months. We're completing the build out on the makerspace and the co-working space, which is located on the east side of the street, and that will be set for a grand opening that has a tentative date of August 27th right now. And in addition to that, the 3 restaurants on the west side of the street are in final phase construction. The floors are poured, the construction that's framed in, and they're starting to go in, and we'll be doing finishing, and it will have a updated date, we believe, of opening on the end of August for all 3 restaurants.
Harold, does PSU do any kind of exit survey with students? Like the Block 22, do you guys do an exit survey?
I believe University Housing does talk to those students, and actually the feedback that we did get from Dr. Irwin actually was very good, who's the Vice President of University Housing, or Student Life.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
Workforce development continues to be a big issue, especially as our unemployment rate is right around 3.5%. Those are the brand new numbers. So we're looking at every angle to help our businesses recruit new employees. Commissioner McNay and I joined a large group in traveling to Monette, Missouri a couple of weeks ago to look at what's called a CAP school, which is a good model for helping to integrate the business community with the local high schools. feel very promising. Dr. Brad Hansen at USD 250 will probably lead the charge on that, but we'll certainly support him. Also tackling issues like the early childhood education capacity issue, working with our partners at the Family Resource Center and other local providers. Representative Mernan is involved in that. June 17th, Kansas Action for Children will actually be here the afternoon of June 17th, and we'll be showing a documentary over at Block 22 from 2:30 to 4:30 that is very powerful and really shows the correlation between a community and investment in early childhood education and how that impacts workforce development and economic development. So that's something that we will continue to pursue. It's a huge issue. It's something that not only is Pittsburgh facing right now, but it's kind of a universal problem. But feel like we will begin that community conversation on June 17th. So I encourage anybody that wants to attend that to do so. And if they were to call me at the chamber, I'm happy to send the flyer that has the embedded registration link. But all that is a part of workforce development. CTEC, Commissioner McNay and I are also on the executive committee at CTEC. It's going extremely well and looking at which programs to grow, which ones are in demand. So we've got a lot of good things going on in terms of workforce development. We're just trying to ramp those up to make sure that our businesses that are growing always have the access to the kind of employees that they need.
Right. And following right on the footsteps of that is the technology transfer program. We've actually been awarded another grant through the Economic Development Association for a technical assistance grant. And really what that is develop a commercialization process. So a lot of the people that's here in Pittsburgh wanting to start new businesses and really understand the resource channel that we have here in terms of taking a product and commercializing that. We really don't have an established system at the university, and we never have had one of those in the history of the university, even though we've done it successfully through the Kansas Polymer Research Center. So we're investing in the process that will not only affect just the university, but it will affect the citizens of Pittsburgh in the fact that they can walk in the doors at Block 22 with an idea, and we can guide them through a very effective path of how they can take their product and take it to commercialization, utilizing local Pittsburgh manufacturing companies and resources here in town. So we were able, with the grant money, to hire WSU because they've been very effective at building an effective technology transfer process, and they're basically helping us model that program here so that it'll work for both university and citizen-based people.
Working with a gentleman named Steve Robb, who has been around Pittsburgh for a number of years, retired from Pittsburgh State University, on an economic impact analysis. Steve has done this in communities across the country and is looking forward to doing one for Pittsburgh. Really what it will help us do is gauge the economic impact of particularly projects that request revolving loan fund assistance. And especially if they don't neatly fit into this box of jobs created or capital investment, which are kind of the traditional economic development criteria. Often you know that those have value, but it can be difficult, especially for the Economic Development Advisory Committee as they screen these requests and make recommendations to you to really be able to quantify the economic impact of that. So Steve is going to work on basically an analysis that will help us better, the EDAC, when they make recommendations to you, to be able to assign an economic value to that so that you can factor that in when you're making your decisions. But we have a number of projects right now going on that, again, are very worthwhile, very beneficial, but this impact analysis will help us assign that dollar value to it, and look forward to working with Steve to present that to you.
Do you have a timeline on that?
He thinks he can get it done fairly quickly because he's done it in similar communities. So I would hope that he would be ready by July to present a draft for us to look at.
I
Yes.
would just love if in that sort of vein of different considerations that you might consider businesses or companies coming in that have sort of like a net positive green, sustainability factor, in that, because it'd be cool to have Pittsburgh be a place where we were attracting, especially now, with you with the KTRC, sustainable plastics and reuse. So that would be a good sort of point to check on.
That's a great point.
Our final point is really updating on the manufacturing engagement and our small business development support center. So really, we've doubled down on these efforts, and we've really taken a strong approach to Pittsburgh. And in doing so, we've been, just since the first of the year, we've worked with 6 new retail shops and restaurants along Broadway, helping them from anything from cash flow projections to solid financial statements to help grow their business and find areas of opportunity of additional dollars to help their business. In addition to that, through our manufacturing extension partnership in the state, we've been able to help 3 local manufacturers doing some really significant work in helping them grow their business through lean technology and other tools that we have, and then also to help them grow their business through logistics areas of concern. A couple of things that's significant about that is we've had a small business development center here on site for 20 plus years, and it really had become quite stagnant, and we invested the resources in that really has made a significant impact in my mind, and I think in others, for the local economy and for the region here, and what we're trying to do that's helping to draw people within the region into Pittsburgh to help satisfy their economic development needs. So I think that's a quick update. It's a lot, but
I'm just a couple I'm glad to see that these 3 expansions that you talked about initially, Blake, are in city, people who want to be here and want to expand and continue to grow. The other thing is this child care issue. I know you said that you're going to basically start July the 17th or June the 17th. But have we had any interest from any new or existing people who want to provide this service?
No, and I know that Commissioners McNally and McNay have served on the board of the Family Resource Center. What it all comes down to is, I believe you can have 3 children per 1 employee. Is that correct?
Infants.
And
It
for the
depends on
the problem
size,
is
yeah.
the infants and the toddlers.
Right.
You can only have 1 employee per 3 children. So it's extremely expensive, and I know there's a concern about how much you can charge in Pittsburgh and make that cash flow. So in most providers, not only the Family Resource Center, but the others, the older kids are cash flowing the younger ones. So it's a model that right now probably isn't particularly attractive for someone to come in and start their own, but we're exploring all opportunities. Obviously, the low-hanging fruit is to grow what we've got, but as a community try to figure this out, I think we've got to look at all of our options. But as far as someone from outside contacting us and asking about establishing a new provider, we haven't received any of those calls.
Well, obviously, we're not the only community that's facing this challenge, and other communities are, I suppose, addressing it some way, that we should be able to maybe get a feel from them.
Sure.
We're actually the leaders with the Family Resource Center. I mean, unless you go to Kansas City and you have the for-profit, and I think we've heard that infant care for a week sometimes is north of $200. So we just don't have the capacity to charge that. Our demographics don't support that. So.
But an example is right now the Family Resource Center has, and correct me if I'm wrong, approximately 130 kids on the newborn and toddler waiting list.
Yeah.
That's just on the waiting list. And when you look at a place like the center, there are over 200 businesses that have employees that depend on the Family Resource Center. So if they're not there, those employees don't go to work, those businesses can't be successful, so it is all very interconnected.
I know it's a big
It
issue,
is.
big issue. Okay, anything else? Thank you, gentlemen, we appreciate it. Consider the following. Ordinance number S-1062. Consider adopting ordinance number S-1062, authorizing the city of Pittsburgh, Kansas to issue industrial revenue bonds, Northgate Plaza Project, Series 2019, in a principal amount not to exceed $3,180,000 for the purpose of providing funds to pay the cost of acquiring, purchasing, constructing, installing, furnishing, and equipping a commercial facility including land, buildings, structures, improvements, fixtures, machinery, and equipment, authorizing the issuer to enter into certain documents and actions in connection with the issuance of said bonds, sales tax exemption only. Approve or disapprove? Yes, sir, Jamie?
As you all know, this Northgate Shopping District is where the Big Lots, Applebee's, the former Payless, the old Walmart area, basically. And this is just a legal formality for the developers to utilize this industrial revenue bonds as a economic development tool. I think it's approximately about 1/3 of their total investment in that property. And by doing this, they're able to get a lower interest rate on these bonds, and they can either get a property tax abatement or a sales tax abatement, and they're only requesting the sales tax abatement on the construction when they do their improvements to this shopping area.
And am I not correct in remembering that this does not provide the city with any liability?
No, that's correct, sir. We're just kind of like the agency that makes it happen for them.
Funnels through us.
We have no financial responsibility on these bonds whatsoever. It's all borne by the developers.
Okay. Any questions or concerns?
Move to approve?
I second it.
It's been moved and seconded. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Petition and authorizing resolution. 311 South Broadway, curb and sidewalk replacement. Staff is recommending the acceptance of a petition and approval of resolution number 1221, authorizing the replacement of a sidewalk and curbing in front of 311 South Broadway. Approve or disapprove, staff recommendation. Yes, sir.
Essentially, this person's asking that in participating with our 50/50 sidewalk program, that their portion be assessed through their taxes over a period of 7 years, which was what we had proposed when we came up with the program. And so this is just the mechanics to make that happen.
Well, I'm happy to see somebody using it. In particular, that sidewalk is pretty lousy.
Okay. Well, if there are no questions, I move to approve.
I second.
It's been moved and seconded. All in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Thank you, sir. Non-agenda reports and requests. Nothing?
I have a couple things.
Okay.
I'd just like to thank the city employees that responded to work once the storm siren sounded. Thank you for hard work. Also, I'd like to thank Westar for the crews they had in the city and the surrounding areas that responded and got the power restored as soon as possible. At the last commission meeting, I had an issue with the city's website talking about street sales tax and what my issues were. Other commissioners were going to study that and have a discussion at this meeting. Just wonder what they came up with.
Well, I had thoughts. So I went onto the website and just tried to find the ordinance. And I mean, I guess I'm sort of using this issue as a larger thing of saying that it's not easy if you want to find an ordinance. A couple years ago, I was looking something up to do something for my home, and I probably spent half an hour trying to find the ordinance to make sure that I was going to be in compliance. So I'm not a web developer. I would make a lot more money if I was. But I think it would be really great, sort of speaking to this point, if it was just easier to find like the actual, like a list of ordinances, or easier to search. Because right before this meeting, I went over and Tammy and I were trying to find it, and like we couldn't, before we knew the number of the ordinance, we were just sort of searching around and we couldn't find it. So I don't remember who does our website, and I'm sure that they have lots on their plate, but I think that it would be really cool somewhere on the homepage just to say, hey, to view ordinances, click here. So any ordinance, anybody who wanted to do something to their home, to their own sidewalk, if you're curious about, pet animal ordinances, that it was just easier to go in and find that actual language. So
Well, you'd
That was
think there
fine.
would be a, you type in a phrase or something that would pull up the ordinance that you're, or an assortment of ordinances.
I think it does. I
Does
mean,
it?
I've not really had any,
We couldn't find the street when we were searching and typed in a couple of different ones.
So did you find it?
We eventually did with the ordinance number.
So did you have any concerns with the words, construction and alteration added to, the ordinance that was approved by the voters?
Well, I mean, I think that if people want to, what's on the website is a pared down, we don't all speak legalese. I mean, you can hear, Patrick reading some of these, they sound very clunky. And so a paraphrase thing on the website, but for it to be easier for someone who did want to look at that actual language so they could get to the ordinances, whatever that ordinance was, and be able to find that easier. That's my thought.
I think Chuck's asking you basically,
I know what you mean.
is it yay or nay? Since
I,
you're speaking, I mean.
well, it's neither, it's a compromise.
Okay.
I think it should be easier for the
Okay.
people who want to find that actual language, to find it. So
Okay.
that's my answer.
Anyone else?
So, what, are you all right with the words added to the ordinance that they voted on?
so let's clarify, they didn't change the ordinance.
Right.
They have
No.
a description of the ordinance in which they use the word construction. So to say that we changed the ordinance is
I
not.
didn't say that at all.
Yeah,
no.
yes, you did.
No.
Yeah, you did.
I said the words were added to the
You
ordinance.
said to change the ordinance, is
The
what you just
words were
said.
added to the ordinance.
They
That's
weren't
what-
added to the ordinance, they were.
Well, yeah, excuse me, I apologize.
Okay.
They were added
We're
to
talking
the,
to the description.
yes.
Okay.
And the issue I have with it is people voted to renew the sales tax with the wording maintenance and repair. And when we did that, I remember being on the commission. And to continue that ordinance, when it came up, we as commission, if we didn't change anything, the amount, the wording, through state statute, we could continue to have that ordinance for another 5 years. Vote of 2/3 of the commissioners, I think it was 5-0 at the time. So those words, if we would have added them to that ordinance as a commission, I don't think we could have continued that on. So anyway, we didn't add the words. We decided as a commission, we wanted to continue the street sales tax for another 5 years. State statute said we could. Somebody from the state later, that was, I don't know, July or sometime. Later on, they said that we need to have a special election. We did that in September. The wording was for maintenance and repair of city streets. That was approved by voters, and my issue was, if you look up on the city website, I don't see the issue of taking them 2 words out of there because they weren't included. I want to see the wording as the ordinance reads for the maintenance and repair of city streets.
That's the solution in making it easier to find those ordinances, because language on a website isn't legally binding, right? The actual ordinance is legally binding. So the ordinance says that the thing that the people voted on. So
Don't you
if-
think the
I think
website
that-
should reflect the wording of the ordinance?
So can I ask you a question, Chuck?
Reflect or,
it's a paraphrase.
or, reflect or, what's that
Be
word?
worded as the ordinance
Well-
states. Don't you think it's misleading when a couple other words are
I
added?
don't think it's misleading.
I think it is.
Well,
I
I
think it is.
understand you do.
So,
I
Chuck-
understand you do.
Was this,
Okay,
an-
well,
was this an issue for you before the letter to the editor?
Yes, it was, because I was part of that commission,
But did
not
you-
Patrick was, and I was, and we worked hard as a commission to continue that street sales tax. And we did it as a commission by state statute, exactly like it was written. So we wanted to make sure, because I think a street sales tax is something that's needed. And I would like to see on the website, and I don't know why the 2 words were added. Somebody approved those words to be added to it, and I just feel like it's misleading because it's not for construction, alteration, it's for maintenance, repair.
Well, what
Just
do you
like
think
it-
this is if it's not construction or alteration? I mean, if you're grinding off the
That's not-
that is It's in there, it's in there.
Did you look up?
I didn't look up that.
If you want to turn in our agenda to page 2/14 from KDHE, I think, or from KDOT, they have a definition of construction, which is altering, repairing, improving, or demolishing any structure, building, or highway for drainage. I mean, it's not exactly the same.
Building a highway, so this is a road, street sales tax road. And
Well,
all
I
I'm
just-
saying is, when we worked to get the citizens to vote on this, I just feel that the original wording should be on the website. I feel it's misleading when you add two other words on that. And I just found something that we all was sent from the League of Municipalities, and I'll say this because it doesn't look like anybody has an issue with the words, but I would make a motion after I read this. Public servants are keepers of the public trust. Even the appearance of impropriety can tarnish the public perception of government. So if they vote for maintenance repair, that's what they voted for. When you add construction and alteration, after the vote was taken, I think that might tarnish the image and be misleading to the general public. So I make a motion that the words construction and alternative road words to the city website be removed.
I would like to make a comment. I think we need to acknowledge why we're here. There was a letter to the editor from someone who lives on Hampton Road, whose past letters to the editor would indicate some animosity toward the city. That's why we're here.
That is not why, Dawn, you
It
didn't.
wasn't- it was not an
You didn't
issue.
listen to what I was
I
saying.
heard
I
it.
read
I
that
don't
letter,
believe it.
I looked, huh?
I don't believe that this was an issue before that letter, otherwise why didn't you?
Well, when it was brought to my attention, I looked up the ordinance, and I was on the commission when that ordinance was extended. And my thoughts are, it should be the same wording on the website as those that was on the commission at the time wanted to continue that ordinance. We did by a 2/3 vote. The words were not in that ordinance. The state said we have to have a special election. We put a special election out there for maintenance and repair, construction, alternative roads weren't in there.
Okay, we have a motion before the floor. Is there a second? Motion died for lack of second.
Thank you.
Thank you. Anything else?
No, we're good.
Move to adjourn.
I make a motion to adjourn.
Is there a second?
Second.
On that, we got a second. All in favor?
Aye.
That's somebody.